If you give a horse a good education, it's one of the best gifts you can give them. No matter where they go in their life, they're going to have something to offer people that will kind of ensure them a good life.
Niki Flundra is a prominent equestrian and stunt rider from Canada, celebrated for her versatility in horsemanship and breathtaking trick riding. Known for her work as Amber Marshall's stunt double on Heartland, Niki captivates audiences with daring performances like full-speed bridleless gallops, all rooted in a deep bond with her horses. Her success comes from the trust she builds through groundwork, especially in the round pen, where she fosters communication and confidence with young horses. Niki also believes in giving older horses meaningful jobs, keeping them engaged and sharing their wisdom with newer riders. As a mother, Niki's approach has expanded to raising her children with horses, teaching them life lessons in responsibility, empathy, and resilience. Her journey is a powerful example of how passion, skill, and connection to horses can lead to extraordinary achievements. Whether you're training, performing, or simply a horse lover, Niki's story of courage and empathy will inspire you to strengthen your own bond with horses and push the boundaries of what's possible.
Dear Horse World, it's Niki Flundra.
Niki Flundra, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I have heard so many cool things about you.
Well, thank you.
And looking at your bio, you have done a lot. So reading about you and hearing about you, you're a ranch woman, a rodeo rider, a mom, a performance rider, a stunt rider. What would be the first way to that you would use to describe yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess lately probably the biggest role in my life is mom and wife, and the ranch has kind of become such a big part of our world. So probably now more than ever I'm just ranch wife and mom, and I really like to do lots of fun horse stuff on the side.
So you have 3 boys.
3 boys, yeah.
And you're raising them. We're here on your ranch. It is 8,000 acres. Is that right?
Yeah, give or take a little bit, yeah.
So why all that space?
Well, we run quite a few cows here. We run cow-calf operation, and then we run some yearlings on the side as well. And so just need the grass and so it's just kind of what we do, and we're really blessed to be here.
I was not expecting when I came here that it was it's like Yellowstone vibes up here.
Yeah, we're kind of tucked in the southwest corner of Alberta, and it's beautiful here. We love it, and yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So for everyone who's listening, I mean, who hasn't moved cattle, and we did that a little bit this morning, and that was so cool, going out and seeing your cows and riding with those horses that's their day job, right? Like those horses spend their time moving cows.
Yeah, we have quite a few horses on the ranch that and lots of people will say just ranch horses, but a ranch horse has to be so well-rounded and safe, and you have to be able to rope off them to doctor cattle, and you have to be able to, they have to have quite a bit of athletic ability to get the cattle moved where you need to move them and safe. We put our kids on a lot of them, and we've got some really great horses here.
So when we were out with the horses today in the field, you talked about how ranch horses move through the world because they're part of a job.
Yeah.
And how ranch work really plays into horsemanship and stockmanship. Can you share a little bit about that with our listeners?
Yeah, it's something that I've really given a lot of thought to in the last few years that I've been so involved in the work on the ranch, and I've started to do more, in the cow horse end of things, and just seeing, I guess I always knew in my horse training that when you really give a purpose and a reward behind what you're asking of your horse, they just are so willing, and they're so motivated to try for you, and they're so happy to do it because it's like us. When we have purpose and reward in what we're doing, it's a special thing, right? You really feel like you're doing something for a reason, and you understand why, and it motivates you to want to do it better and more. And I think that's that's just it for horses. When there's a job to do and a purpose to it, they get that, and there's reward in that for them, and it's a very fulfilling life for them because they get to get out there and get that job done, and they crave it, and you can see it in them. Like, we've got horses that when we leave them behind, they're pacing the fence. They want to go. They want to go do that job, and I'm like, "Oh, like, how can I apply that to every other area of what I do and create that try and that heart and that willingness behind it that just naturally kind of unfolds with the ranch work." So,
Mm.
it's an interesting perspective, I guess.
Very.
Mhm.
And I noticed something that I learned in moving cows with you and with Josh Nickel
Mhm.
is it happens a lot slower than I
Yes.
was expecting. I think in the movies they depict that moving cattle is like this big fast pace and you're
Right.
galloping after the cows and stuff. It doesn't happen like that, does it?
Not if you can help it.
Right.
And everything that, my husband and I try to do, whether it's with the horses or with the cattle, is always less is more, is kind of our philosophy. And so the quieter we can move the cattle, the less stress to them. The quieter we can ask our horses of things, the less stress to them. So always less is more, and often that makes it smoother, more efficient, and at the end of the day, it's faster.
Yeah, I found it to be really enlightening to witness moving cows off of the energy that you have with you and your horse, the body language.
Mhm.
And now I starting to kind of clue together or put the pieces together why so many of the founding fathers of natural horsemanship were also cattlemen.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of things in working with a cattle and the angles and how you approach, and very similar to horsemanship and working with a horse. So I believe it's all connected. And
Well, and it makes me wonder when you see your boys out in this huge amount of space that you have. And something that is a resounding theme in some of the recent episodes we've recorded and guests we've had on is the importance of observation.
yes.
So, wondering when a child spends time, like when I look at your kids, and when I look at kids that are on iPads and on phones, like when
Yeah.
I imagine what does that do for their ability to observe?
Yeah.
And then when I look at your kids out on the horses, we're moving through like acres and acres and acres of pasture, and they're observing the world around them, and they're witnessing the moving of the cattle, and they're watching the dogs, and they're watching what the dogs are doing, and then they're coordinating and looking at what we're doing. It changes your ability to observe, which is such a fundamental skill for horsemanship.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think um yeah, I think you're really onto something with that because they horses horses and kids, there's so many parallels to training horses, and I guess you would say you're training your children up as a
Yeah.
parent
Hmm.
into the world and teaching them all these things. And the longer I parent, and the more and the older I get working with horses, the more I see how they parallel one another. And that observation that you mentioned, um, the children, they they always see our actions, and that's, I really believe, how they learn. Same from our animals. They learn and they react by the way that we are with them and how we make them feel, right? Like, that's
Hmm.
such a big part of it, is how we make them feel and how we're interacting with them. And we're always teaching them from the time we walk out into the field to catch them, or from the moment we're getting our children out of bed in the morning. We're always teaching them something when we're interacting with them. So
Mm.
just having that mindset of every single little daily interaction that I'm having, whether it's with my animals, my children, it's it's creating this relationship that's a learning relationship on both sides,
Hmm.
right? And that observation, it kind of goes both ways, because yes, they observe this whole world through their eyes, and they're like little sponges picking everything up that we do. But if we really sit back and think, wow, like, we have so much to learn from just watching them, and
Mm.
watching the way our horses do things and the way our children do things. And it's amazing to me to see that if we can just open our mindset up to understanding how they see the world, whether it's children or horses, and then try to teach them in the best way that works for them. It's like the sky's the limit. It's so cool.
That's amazing advice to hear as another woman who isn't a mom yet. Like when you think about because it sounds like what you're saying is you're not just a horsewoman when you're riding. You're a horsewoman from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed.
100%. It's just who you are. It's you know, I always kind of believe that how you do anything is how you do everything. So I think that every single thing, our children and our horses are feeding off that. Our energy, our actions, our the way we speak, the way everything that we do is affecting the world around us. And I really believe everything's connected. The way I am with my children affects the way I am with my horses. The way I am with my horses affects how my children are going to end up, because it's all an energy that combines that just creates this lifestyle, right? I just think if you can have the perspective and the mindset to be aware of that and be aware that every single thing and way that I'm presenting myself to them in the world, it's like a cause and effect, right? Like it's teaching them, it's causing them to do something. So for me, it's just being mindful of that all the time. It's like, okay, am I bringing good energy to my kids today? Am I teaching them good things? Am I showing them how to live a good life? Not just telling them, because they need me to show them. And my horses need that too.
Yeah.
My horses need that more than anything. They need me to show them the energy and show them the expectation. And they will give me as much as I will give them every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were a horsewoman before you were a mom.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing the horses have helped you do that makes you a better mom?
Discipline, um, and patience. I've struggled my whole life with patience and discipline, and those are the cornerstones of being a great parent or a great horsewoman. You really have to be a disciplined person to get, to have that relationship. You discipline with your emotions, discipline with the physical work, the training, discipline with being mentally strong enough to believe in yourself enough to see the things through. It's the exact same with parenting. Like, I just really have to tell myself, no, even if you don't want to do it, you need to be disciplined enough to see that through. And that will teach my children and my horses more at the end of the day than anything will. And patience.
Well, and I think those are two amazing skills to give your boys.
I hope so.
And so, if I were to really hear what you just shared, which is we receive the energy that we give.
Totally.
So we have to be like a walking example
Mm-hmm.
for our horses and for our kids.
Yep.
And so if you want your children to have discipline and patience, two amazing attributes to exist in this world, and if you want your horses to have discipline and patience, then you have to reflect that back to them.
Yeah, I think so. I think that both of them will only be as good as what you are for them. So, and that's something I do. I have to remind myself a lot, because I'm not I can be a lot more patient with the horses, it seems like, than with the kids. And I guess because the kids is just 24/7, like it's all the time, right? So I have to work harder to be patient and try to, just work through things with the kids. The horses, it comes a little easier to me to just be patient and to think, progress, not perfection, and just little steps all the time, and just build on that foundation, and just have the patience to know if you're just making a little bit of progress, it's good and you're going to get there. Instead of because I'm the personality type, I want it all right now. Like, I just want to go, just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
So I have to tell myself, patience, little steps, build on that foundation, and you will get there faster and better than if you just try to get to the top now.
It reminds me of Tig Maynard, one of our masterclass instructors, says 1% better every day is what you're going for.
Yep.
And that changed my mindset so much, because I'm like you. And it's so funny because the world will also encourage us to be like, go get them.
Yes.
Take no prisoners. Like, just go after everything that you need. But that energy doesn't work with horses.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work in training. In fact, if you try to take 4 steps forward, you'll probably fall back.
That's right.
8
Yeah.
steps.
You just have to let them find it and just show them little bits at a time, and it's like building blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I have to remind myself that all the time, and then usually you can get to where you wanna go pretty fast if you just
It's like the saying,
build on it.
slow is steady and steady is fast,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, that one also kind of blew my brain when I heard it
Yeah.
because it's very true.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. It's so easy for us to kind of want to rush things.
Yeah.
I feel like this segues really nicely into the stunt riding work. So because I would
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
being a stunt rider and training, because you train your horses for
Yes.
movies.
Yeah.
And to give everyone who's listening a little bit of an idea, so Niki has been in a whole host of movies and shows, but she's ones that you will also probably remember really well is she's a constant feature in the, what is it, 11-year running show of Heartland?
17.
17?
I know, it's
Oh my
wild.
God.
I
Okay.
know, it's wild.
So 17-year running Heartland.
Yeah.
You've been on that show for the whole time?
Pretty steady through the years. More stunts in the early years. I don't do a lot of the stunt work anymore. And my horses kind of over the years, some years more than others have
Mhm.
done, a lot of the Liberty work, a lot of the specialty work. So yeah, that show has been really fun, really a blessing that came about.
Well, and we've also seen you in The Revenant, The Assassination of Jesse James, Flicka. Then there's a ton of you're doing a movie right now with Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson. Then you're going to Vancouver shortly
Yeah.
to do 2 months on a movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there you go. Like just looking at that kind of resume and then developing both yourself and horses for that kind of work, dedication and discipline and patience must be a really important feature to be able to do this kind of work.
Yes. Yeah, it's a different the film industry is really kind of different than anything else I've been involved in. It's different from the live shows that I did for all the years when I traveled kind of North America wide first as a trick rider, and then I took my Liberty horses on the road, and it's different from that in the way that it's a little more of maybe a controlled setting. Live performances, you've got one shot, and
Mm,
there's all this crowd energy, and it's just a different dynamic. The film work is very structured in what they want. Lots of times when you get to set, it changes very quickly though, so you have to be very flexible and very willing to adapt to what they want. And I like the challenge of looking at what they're hoping to get and then figuring out how to give that to them while still being really fair to the horses and
mm,
setting firm boundaries on what's fair to the horses, because they're not educated in horsemanship or understanding any of that about what would be fair to ask of the horses. So it's my job to educate them
mm.
on what I'm willing to do and how to get them their shot. And so my horses will do things like lay down, rear up. They'll walk, trot, run to a mark at different distances. It's called A to B. So if they need a horse to suddenly walk into the middle of a meadow and stop at a certain part, my horse could do that. Or in this most recent film, Black Horse had to kind of come down through this fog on a mountain and meet Jennifer Lawrence holding this baby at the mark. And so it's very structured and very different from the live shows, but it's a lot of pressure because there's
Yeah.
so much money and all these people, and it just all comes down to like, okay, is your horse going to do it? Like they don't want to have to do it over and over. Although sometimes they will, even when your horse is perfect, and then you kind of have to set the boundaries of, okay, he's done it enough. Like
Ah.
that's not being fair to him to keep asking and asking and asking. So it can go both ways. Sometimes they want it one shot done, amazing.
Mhm.
You feel all that pressure go away. And other times it's like, okay, you have to say, okay, we're really only going to do this
Yeah.
once or twice more. So
How do you handle that pressure?
Um, the best way that I know to handle pressure is to just think about, what does my horse need me to be right now? What does my horse need from me so
Mm.
that they can be their very best for this scene? So, um, for this baby scene we just did, we needed just we needed him to come in quiet and kind of nuzzle the baby, let the baby. And so I knew my horse, everything about that needed to be very quiet, very slow. I knew exactly what he needed from me, and then there's no room for the nerves and the
Mm,
butterfly. It's just, "Okay, what does my horse need from me?" And that's all I focus on. Same with the high energy, charging, rearing, battle scenes. And it's like, "Okay, my horse needs a lot from me. My energy's gotta be up here.
mm,
We've gotta be intense, focused, and, like, he needs my all to get his all." So it's like I just kinda meet them wherever I need them to be, and that's all I think about.
cool.
So that just gets me through.
I think that's really good advice for riders who are doing anything from, horse show events to a clinic.
Yeah,
Is I think if we focus our attention wholeheartedly on our horses
yeah.
and look at and like channel, because I'm someone who's suffered a lot from nerves, especially in competition.
Yes.
And I think it's because I focused too much on what I was doing
Yeah.
and whether I was going to do a good job. Whereas if you can focus just on your horses, I imagine that it allows you to kind of get really quiet
Yeah,
amongst the noise.
it does.
Mm.
And really, I'll try to pick a few key points of like whether it was a live show and I knew I had to lay my horse down facing the crowd that way and I
Mm.
had to bring I would pick my key points of what were important to make that show the best that it could be and that was it. I don't think about any of what could go wrong. I don't think I
Mm.
only focus on what I want to happen and what I need physically and energy wise to be doing to make that happen. And then the
Mm.
rest does kind of fall away. It gets quiet and you take that breath and you just think, "Okay, I just tell my horses before everything, it's you and me and what do you need from me?" And I'm kind of a weirdo. I talk to my horses all the time. I tell them what superstars they are, and
Mm.
I really think they get it, and they know, and they try so hard.
You think if we talk to our horses
Totally.
and tell them how much we love them, that
Yes,
they
I
feel
do.
that?
I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I do. I think they whether they understand the words or they understand the energy, I think every words and actions we say has an energy to it that they definitely understand. So, yeah, I'm always talking to my horses.
And how, like in those high stress situations in movie sets, I would imagine, or even at like rodeo events, because you've traveled all over the NFR
Yep,
as a performance rider, all over the Canadian rodeo scene as well.
yep,
So your horses must have traveled a lot. Now, someone who's also like I'm traveling with my horses, like
yep.
So how do you keep your horses regulated and like how do you mitigate all that stress from travel and from performance?
Well, when they're young and you're kind of seasoning them, it's hard, and that's where I'm feeling really fortunate right now. I've got this team of horses that's kind of been there and done that, and
Mm.
I know when I get to set, nothing is going to bother them because they've been there and seen that and done that. And in the early days of traveling, I would take the young ones without the pressure of performing and just let them see everything and be with an older horse to kind of season them along and show them the ropes. And like
Oh,
the
cool.
older horses don't get fussed about much, and then the younger horses will just settle into it. And then as you go over time, I would introduce them to the performance side of things. If I could set it up like that, I
Yeah.
would. There were times where there was the odd time I'd have an older one get hurt and I had to throw a younger one into the shows or
Mhm.
whatever faster than I'd want to, but it usually worked out pretty good.
Interesting you talk about mentorship because
Yes.
I had the same conversation with Josh Nickel about
Yeah.
mentoring older horses, mentoring younger horses,
Yes.
which is really beautiful because I haven't always heard that theme in
Yeah.
conversation in the horse world.
Yeah, it's a lot like us, right? We always have horsemen and women that we look up to, and Josh is an incredible horseman, and I've had people in my life that have taught me so much and that I've looked to, like, how do I train this or how do I handle this?
Mm.
And I think horses are a little bit like that. Like if you're on the road, they would look to the reactions or the comfort, the safety, right? They're very, herd oriented and they
They're
and they look
relational
for that.
beings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they look for that kind of leadership and that if they're not the confident one. So I think for sure it helps them to be around ones that are confident in any
Mm.
situation.
That's so interesting because
Mhm.
that That was really enlightening for me to understand how mentorship can play a big part. So then, and then there's such a role for our older seasoned horses, right?
Yeah.
That they're not just like, okay, you can go out into the field now, you're no longer needed.
Yeah.
That actually they can do a tremendous job of mentoring younger horses.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
Yeah, and you see it like, you see it lots with the colts starting. They'll get on their good old seasoned horse to start the colts and kind of show them that
yeah.
forward motion and just kind of show them the way. And yeah, I think there's lots to it for sure.
So you mentioned colt starting. That's also something you
Yes.
do. And you are a co-founder with your husband of Heart of the Horse, which
Yes.
is the Canadian version of Road to the Horse,
Yes.
which is really cool. So what do you think, I mean, for people who are listening who don't know much about colt starting, and to be fair, before Tick Maynard applied, and entered in to do Road to the Horse last year, I didn't know anything about the colt starting scene either.
Right.
And then I was fascinated because it's a whole world unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell our listeners a little bit about colt starting and the art of it?
Yeah, well, it's probably, one of the most important stages that your horse is ever going to go through, right? It's setting that foundation up for the rest of their life. And it's like, so it goes back to children. Those 0 to 5 years are so important for that foundation of who they're going to become. And they're just like soaking everything in, and horses are the same. So that first introduction to their educational is so important. And you want to make sure that your horse is in good hands when they have that start. Hands that are, going to be soft, but, firm and fair, and show them the way and show them the boundaries, and teach them what they're going to need to know to get through life. And I once heard it said that if you give a horse a good education, it's one of the best gifts you can give them, because they will have, no matter where they go in their life, they're going to have something to offer people.
Mm.
And then that will kind of ensure them a good life, right?
Right.
So if you give them a good education, it's a real gift to them, I think.
So for people who are listening who maybe they have a young horse that's unstarted, and I know that that's something that some of our members and our listeners have explored or are exploring. What's some advice that you would give for someone who's looking to get a young horse, either, a young filly or a young colt started? What advice would you give them about what they should be looking for in a professional colt starting situation?
Yeah. I think just like really do your homework and find somebody that aligns with your goals, because all of us horse people kind of have a different idea of what's important to us, the direction we want to go with our horse, the disciplines we want to go, what, like, at the end of the day, what's this horse's role in your life going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to find somebody that kind of aligns with that, and that trains in a way that you feel good about, and somebody that's really open to your questions and taking you on that journey with the horse, and kind of showing you what they're doing with them, and inviting you to be a part of that education, seeing it, teaching you how to go on from what they've done. Like, for me, that's important. And yeah, I just think really doing your homework and making sure it's somebody that you feel good about how they're working and riding, and just making sure that it aligns with where you want to go.
Hmm. And there are a lot of different ways to start horses.
Mhm.
That's like there's a lot of different ways to ride horses. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways to start horses.
Yep.
What do you think are like the universal principles of starting horses?
Um, well, I think there is a ton of different methods, but the principles, I think that, you always want to be encouraging that forward motion, that forward thinking, that willingness to try. It's always important to me with the young ones to really try to nurture that willingness to try. So really rewarding every chance you get, and then building on that, whether that's forward motion, or the acceptance of the saddle, or the acceptance of us on their back, or in their presence, or what we're asking. If you can just work your way up to building the try from them,
Mm.
then the rest will kind of fall into place easily. But I think you need to have good forward motion. You need to have good acceptance of the things we're introducing to them, saddle, the flag, all of that kind of stuff. Need to set some boundaries of safety
Right.
measures, because colts can be really unpredictable, really flighty, really, you gotta, and the earlier you kind of put those things in place, I think the easier it is.
Mm.
So I guess for me, that would be it, is just setting them up to learn and teaching them that if they try, that's the right answer. They just got to try
Yeah.
to find it, and then keep building on that. So whether it's trying for a trot or a lope, or
Yeah.
if they just try to figure it out,
That
and
you're rewarding the
then
try.
you're going to reward that try, and then they will, pretty soon they'll be loping nice smooth circles on both leads, and it'll just be easy.
Well, and it makes me think of the kind of environment we create for our kids when they're learning in school, right?
Hmm.
If it's like, wow, good job. Now, what about, what else? What else
Yeah,
do you see?
that's right.
Like if the teacher is really enthusiastic about the child's experience in learning,
Yeah.
then I imagine a child has a very different experience than if the teacher's like, no, not quite like that.
Yes.
No, not
Yeah.
quite like that.
Yeah.
You feel already like, oh, okay. You can imagine, and I mean, I can even think of it, like having experienced that as a kid. Like, you kind of don't want to try anymore. You're like, oh, maybe I'm just going to hold back instead.
Yeah, that's right. I think you get a lot further with encouragement than I don't know how you would say, just like being really discouraging to them,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
just being really negative
Or
all the
like
time, or
particular.
punishing, or yeah, being really, really fussy. I think you just, when I'm training, whether it's a young horse or an older horse, I'm always trying to give them benefit of the doubt and find the good things and reward that, and kind of not focus so much on the bad things, and they fall away the more you focus on and encourage the good things.
Mm,
Not that you don't, I mean, there's times you got to nip things in the bud and get, and say, okay, that's not acceptable behavior. Like, we're not doing that.
yeah.
We're going to do this and focus on this part of it.
Oh, cool.
So I guess for the colts, that would be the main thing, is just really rewarding that try. I'm really big on like the forward motion, because if you can get them thinking forward,
Hmm.
then things come easily. And then I train especially younger horses in really small frequent sessions. So
Oh,
I have a 2-year-old I'm working with right now, and I won't do more than 20 minutes or half an hour with him, and I might do a couple of those a day. I'm trying to train a couple new things for this movie with my older horse. I might do 3 15-minute sessions in a day, but I will never go out and work him for an hour.
okay.
Yeah, so I find that's really more effective.
And do you always end on a high?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's
really
probably, you hear that a lot,
I
but
do, but
yeah,
I only heard it later in life. It
yeah.
wasn't mentored to me as a young rider to end on a high, or to end in the same way that I'm seeing in what I would maybe think of as like the colt starting community, or the horse behavior community, or Liberty. There's
Right.
so much emphasis on the mental space of the horse when navigating new things.
Yeah.
And I've really appreciated that perspective, because to me it plays into performance as well.
Oh, for sure. And I think it is really cool, the way the horse world has moved into being a little more mindful of where the horse's perspective is and where their mindset is surrounding all of it. And then using that to create a more positive experience for them, which in turn is a more effective
Hmm.
training session. And I think it doesn't even have to be ending it on a high so much as finding one little good thing, or one, if I've really had a challenging session and I'm just like, man, this is not working. I got to figure out how to turn it around to get one good thing to end on,
Yeah.
and just make it feel like we did something good.
Mm.
So it might not be way up here, but it's still going to be a little bit better than where we were at.
Now, you were sharing with me in your like in the clinics that you do, and you do a lot of clinics, and
Mhm.
you've dedicated your time also to mentoring other riders and
Yep.
clinicking. You do is it 6 specific things that you do
Yeah,
with?
kind of 6 ground I always kinda start my horses with, like, 6 or 7 little groundwork exercises um before I really do the round pen work where I kinda connect them with me and really get into the liberty work. I like to have a good foundation of that groundwork. There are times, though, I've gone to clinics and I've worked with some warm bloods or some studs that, like 2-year-olds or whatever it might be, where maybe that groundwork is, like, just it's not happening the way
Mm.
so I'll go right to the round pen, and once we've kind of got a bit of that connection in the round pen, then the groundwork comes easy.
Oh,
So it's
cool.
not I don't always say, "I have to have this before I do this." Every horse is a little bit different, but I do have 6 or 7 groundwork things that I like to put on everything that everything that I ride or train or come across.
Could you give us a little sneak peek into what that is? What
Yeah,
those
just
are?
like pretty basic things that a lot of trainers would use in their programs, like vertical and lateral flexion, just to kind of I don't do a ton over and over of it, but just kind of say, hey, are you with me? Or can you get
Mm.
soft for me? Lots of vertical flexion. Um,
So for those who are listening, what's vertical flexion?
So vertical is just having that head lower,
Okay,
and then I'll start introducing a little bit of the softness through the halter and even the bit just from the ground,
cool.
as opposed to doing it from the ridden position.
Mhm.
And everything I teach in my clinics transfers really, really easily to the ridden work.
Cool.
And I do have a cue that I would put on them from the ground that would be the same as what the heel of your boot from a ridden position would be, so that it
Mm.
all really kind of goes hand in hand with riding. Because we
Cool.
all eventually want to get to riding them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the lateral and vertical flexion, and then lots of just hind end work, getting them disengaging that hind end around.
Mhm.
I do very specific focus circles that I always tell people, like, don't say it's lunging, because they're not. They're very intentional, focused energy circles.
Oh, cool.
I do a little bit of side passing from the ground and have a really specific way of that I like to teach that. And yeah, and just like change of directions in those circles, leading exercises where they're really with you and backing up from the ground where they're with you. It's not everything that I do on the ground, I want to have slack in the rope and not me physically putting
Mm.
them where they want to go. I want them with me and tuned into me and focused on me. So it's almost just like when I go, they go. When I stop, they stop. And they're just so good for their mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
It sounds also like you're kind of setting them up for a lot of success, that when you do sit on their back for the first or the second time, that what they're experiencing is actually nothing new. So the
Totally.
only new thing they're getting is the weight of you
Yep.
on their back, which is like, that must be overwhelming enough as it is, right?
Yeah, and I think though, but if in their mind they've already got all this groundwork that's kind of got some verbal cues and some things that they're already
Mm.
used to. I have this 2-year-old that I'm training, and by the time I put all this liberty work and groundwork and stuff and I got on her back, I was a little nervous because she was a bit, she wanted to buck a bit in the round pen at liberty and stuff. And when I got on her, she already knew all the feels and all the things, and when I'd cluck, she knew to go forward, and it was just, like, all of a sudden not a big deal, and if she did feel a little bit like she wanted to get anxious, I could just kinda do the things that had her soften on the ground, and "Oh, I know that." She'd come
Cool.
back to me like, "Oh, I know that. I remember that. I can do this." And then it's just, like, a very easy, natural, flowing thing.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like when you start a cold, it doesn't actually have to be like bucking and the horse like being in, because when I see that, sometimes it looks like the horse is in like full survival mode. That it actually could be a really regulated experience the first time someone
Yeah,
gets
and
on.
I think it can be, and I think too, like, it really is dependent on the horse. Some, I think, probably when they feel that weight or just
Hmm.
have that, every horse is going to be different. And I think some, if they're going to buck, they're going to buck,
Yeah.
and it's just going to happen sometimes. And there's just not going to be any ways around it. So I think I'm always a little hesitant to just say, oh, they never should have to do that. There's a way to get around that. Because I do think, um, I do think that a lot of times when you're starting colts, you're going to get on some that are going to buck, and they
Yeah.
just have to work their way through that.
Yeah.
But because I like to be safe, I do everything I can to avoid that. And, it doesn't always work out to where they don't want to kind of grab their butt a bit or run or
Yeah.
buck or bolt a little bit here or there. But, you just do the best you can to avoid that. And if it happens, you just gotta, no big deal, and work through it and then reward the good parts that happen.
Remember the first time you found that feeling of deep connection with your horse? That moment when you knew that this was more than just a sport, more than just a hobby. It was a partnership. It was a way of life. But then things got complicated. Maybe it started with conflicting advice from trainers, or your own frustration of not making progress at the pace that you wanted. Or maybe you even started feeling afraid of your horse's behavior. Suddenly, that magic feeling, that deep connection, that started to slip away. I've been in your shoes, and I know that feeling. That is why I created NF Plus. I want every horse and rider to experience that profound connection that starts with education and a strong support system. At NF Plus, we are breaking down barriers, bringing you the best training, the most helpful advice, and a community that supports you at every step of your journey. With audio and video lessons on everything from horse care to groundwork to rider psychology, NF Plus is your key to unlocking the true potential of your partnership. It's not just about looking good in the saddle or winning ribbons. It's about rediscovering why you fell in love with horses in the first place. It's about becoming a better horse person, becoming someone who has the tools to achieve the goals and find that feel that all horsemen and horsewomen aspire to have. Whether you're an experienced competitor or just starting out, we have designed NF Plus specifically to support you. Join Noelle Floyd Plus today and become part of a movement that puts your relationship with your horse at the heart of everything. Because when you ride with understanding and connection, the possibilities are literally endless. Sign up today at noellefloydplus.com. That's Noelle Floyd, PLUS.com. One of the sort of landing messages from you right now in this conversation is that, like children, we can't put these blanket statements on what we do with horses.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. Because every one of them, there's really no black and white. Like, some need a little something different, and one way of doing something might work really good with one, but you might have to just adjust it a little bit for the next. And I kind of have these groundwork exercises and this liberty work and round pen work that I like to do, and I found really good success with every horse with it. But sometimes you have to adjust things a little bit, and some horses come around amazing right away. Some take a lot of time. Some you have to really change things up just because, they're just need something different from you. So yeah, I think you're right. You hate to just say, this is the only way and that's it, and it works for everything, because I don't think that's ever the case with horses or kids.
You were talking a little bit about wanting to be careful and cautious with colts. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how your relationship with risk changed a bit becoming a mom.
Yeah.
Now, we have a lot of members and a lot of listeners who are moms.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to share with them a little bit of your experience being this super high octane rodeo rider, trick rider, stunt rider, some of the things you were sharing that you've done on movies. I mean, movie sets, that they sound really high risk.
Yeah.
And then you become a mom.
Yeah.
And then your relationship with some of those risks change.
Yeah. And I never thought I would be that person. Like, I was fearless, never had a worry in the world. I would do any stunt, oh gosh, I was fearless. Then all of a sudden I had this little baby, and it got worse with every baby that I had. And I was like, oh, why am I scared all the time to do this stuff? And we'll be moving cows, and there are times you got to get going fast to cut a cow off from going the wrong way or something. My husband would be like, well, get out there and get it done. And I'm like, I'm scared, to run flat out across So I never thought I would be scared of anything. And then all of a sudden I was, and that bugged me. And I was embarrassed about it, because that was just not me. And that was my whole career kind of hinged on me being this brave horsewoman that would do stunts and trick ride, and but it was good for me because it created this transitional time where I educated myself further in horsemanship and changed things up with the Liberty horses and the training. And then I didn't have to go be that trick riding, stunt riding
Mm.
person anymore. I could go a bit of a different direction. And that was, I don't know, I think everybody, like, motherhood is going to be different for everybody. And some might go through that and find it really hard to even get on the back of a horse right away again, or it's hard, like, motherhood changes you a lot, or it did for me. And others, I think, can hop back in it and it's not as big of a deal for them. And so again, just different for everybody, but you just have to just try to build your confidence and do what you can. And
I think a lot of the women listening to this right now are going to really appreciate what you just said, because I think there's a lot of mental challenges that come with becoming a mom and then wanting to kind of get back right in the saddle and maybe go after the same goals that you had, and like you said, motherhood changes you.
yeah, it does. And I mean, everybody feels pressure to a different extent, I guess. And it depends kind of where you are in your riding career and stuff. For me, all of the things that I was doing in the trick riding, that's the only way I knew how to make a living. And that's who I was. That's what I did. And I remember, he's 5 now, after our last son was born. He was born in the middle of January, and I had to be in Texas ready to perform 5 weeks later at the Houston Rodeo and trick ride there. So, like, standing
Oh.
on my horse with a fireworks show overhead, and I had like 5 weeks, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't know if I can do this. I was scared. You're going through all these emotions of having the baby, and I'm just like, and I got to get to Texas, and I got to have the horse in shape, and I got to wear like spandex in 5 weeks, and I got to, like, all the things. And I was the hardest part was I was a bit scared. Like, I was, like,
Mm.
nervous to do it, right? So, and then you feel all that pressure, and it all worked out fine, and it was all good, and my horses just kind of saw me through because they take care of me.
Mm.
Um, and I think my horses always knew when I had, like, little ones riding with me or when I was pregnant, or they were just so good all the time. But yeah, it's a thing. That being a mom, it's a thing.
I love the visual that you gave me when we were riding earlier today about riding with one of your babies in the front, a
Yes.
diaper. What'd you say? A diaper in the boot,
Yeah, but diaper, always had a diaper slid down the side of my boot, and
and a
and
bag for the dirty diaper.
yeah, bag tied off on the saddle for dirty diapers, and I could change all of them standing up in front of the saddle. It was wild, but that's just our life. And the kids always did so good riding. Like, they just were happiest out looking at things, and they were not the, like, sit in the house happy in the chair. Like, they had to be out seeing and moving and doing all the things. And so that it was just easier to go do things. Unless it's really cold or really
Sure.
gross windy or whatever. I mean, you're not going to be a terrible mom like that. But yeah, they all grew up riding, and it's been fun.
Going back to what you were talking about, having
Yeah.
Case and then having the Houston Rodeo 5 weeks after having
Yeah.
him, how did you personally navigate that fear?
Um, I think same thing, just thinking about, like, the horse, just thinking about the horse, like, trying to let like, at Houston, my gosh, there is so much pressure. There's 70 to 80,000 people in the stands in the
Wow.
Energy Stadium, and there's 14 cameras on you and a fireworks show going off over top of you, and you're supposed to be standing effortlessly on your horse carrying a flag with fireworks, smiling, and, like, it's all no big deal. And I get I would get overwhelmed with all of that. So the whole way, my whole life, I've navigated, whether it's getting back after a child or working up towards a movie or
Mhm.
a live show, like the national finals rodeo, like, performing there is a lot of pressure.
I can only imagine.
So how I figured out what works best for me to navigate it is to not think about that whole big picture. I make lists and I break it down into, what do I need to do today?
Hmm.
What can I do today? Maybe I can't, maybe it's a week after the baby and I can't quite ride my horse yet, but I could go work him around in circles, and I could get Dustin to go exercise him, and I can just start there. I can start packing a few things up to load the trailer. What can I do? And then a timeline of like, okay, so we have 5 weeks. This week I can do this. Next week I can do this. Just chunk it all down.
Cool.
And then by the time the 5 weeks is there, I'm not thinking about standing on my horse in front of 80,000 people. I'm just thinking about, okay, I've done all the things. I'm ready. My horse is ready. We're just going to go do this. And I'm just going to think about, what do I need to do? I need to saddle my horse. I need to wrap his legs. I need to make sure the baby's fed and taken care of. I need to get dressed. I need to warm him up. I need to be in the alleyway by this time. I need to have this checklist done. Is my flag ready? Pyro ready? Done that check. Done this. Done this. Pretty soon it's showtime. I've done everything I know how to do to be ready. I'm confident because I know I've done everything I can possibly do to be ready for that moment. And I didn't overwhelm myself by thinking about like all this big whole thing. I just, what can I do today? And then pretty soon it's just done.
That's really good advice because it kind of feels like it breaks it down.
It does. And it's just like that with horse training too. Like, just don't worry so much about this whole big end goal that has to happen. Just like, okay, what can I do today, this week, this month? What would I like to see here, here, and here? And then pretty soon it's just like, no big deal. You've got there.
Navigating fear when you have like a specific challenge is one thing. I hope it's okay if we talk about a little bit of the accident that you had. I mean, you've had a couple accidents.
Yeah.
You were telling me you broke your shoulder.
Yeah, I've had a few.
But there was one in which you got kicked by a horse in the face.
Yes.
Which is like every person's like biggest. I feel like that's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Would be like, oh, I've been kicked all throughout my body.
Yeah.
I even have a nice little scar on my stomach from when I first got my mare. Because she had a lot of trauma around getting cinched. But getting kicked in the face is like, that's a solid fear of most people's, I think.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that experience?
I think I was like 20 years old and I was just trying 2 brand new horses. It was March, so it was kind of snowy out, and I'd taken them to an indoor arena, and it was 2 horses I didn't know at all that I was just going to go ride and try out to see if I was interested in buying either one of them. And I was just leading them to the arena to try, and a dog came around the corner and kind of jumped at this one horse, and he kind of started to pull back, and I just turned to like see what was going on, and this dog kind of jumped at him, and he just came up and reared and came right down, and it all came right down on my face, and then kind of just was like over top of me, and it happened so fast it's kind of blurry, but it never knocked me out. And my farrier was meeting me there later, and he was the one that actually found me, and it never knocked me out, but he said there was a whole trail of blood all the way around in the snow and I don't even remember that part of it really, but he did find me laying in the snow about an hour after it happened, but I was conscious, but I just couldn't do anything, and I had split the side of my face open, and my whole jaw was rolled in, and I lost my bottom teeth, and I broke my chin. So I have five plates in my face, and I separated my ribs. I got stepped on all right here, and I remember getting in the ambulance, and they were trying to like put the thing to get the blood, and I grabbed it from him because one of my teeth was broken off, and then a nerve was exposed, and he kept hitting it, and I was like, "Give me that!" Because he kept hitting it. I was like, "I'll do it," and I'll like put it over here. And oh gosh, I'll never forget my mom's face when she came to the hospital, and my whole jaw was kind of rolled in, and it was not good. It was not good. But it was interesting because I had a great surgeon, and they put me all back together, and I was like 6 weeks with jaw wired shut. And I was trying to get ready because I wanted to be rodeoing as soon as my jaw was not wired shut. So I was practicing and doing all the things. But I was not scared. It never occurred to me to be scared of horses. Like, I wish I could tell you this beautiful story of how I overcame fear, but I was more scared to get on horses after I had babies than I was after I had this big terrible wreck. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't ever really that scared to to trick ride, to even after I broke my shoulder and I've had horses fall on me, I've had in tricks, I've had like bad injuries like that. And it never worried me ever to get
Mm.
back on. And the odd time I would be like, okay, I better start slower and
Mm-hmm.
kind of work my way up to some speed here. But I never really got worried until well into my 30s when I don't know if it was the age or having the boys but at that point I started to really safety up a bit. But
Mm.
yeah, all of those wrecks just they kind of just were what they were, and it never bothered me all that much.
And having like that's a very traumatic event, but it sounds like you were just hyper focused on getting back in
I
the
was
saddle.
like all I could think about was I knew where I wanted to be and what I wanted to accomplish, and it happened in March, and I was like, I have shows booked in May, like I can't, like I've got to keep like I just always was like that. I just wanted to get back at it, and that was just kind of it.
Well, you know what I love about, and it's this just story you just shared totally like just reinforces this to me, is that so many horse people that I've talked to about having major accidents very rarely do hear that they just go like, I'm not gonna ride again.
Yeah.
It seems like the love and the passion and the just obsession with
Yeah.
riding and with horses wills out over.
I think you're right. I just don't think it ever occurs to us that like the horse was even part of that
Yeah,
equation.
yeah.
Like I never one time thought in any of those wrecks to hold it against a horse or to not want to ride or to it was
Mm.
just kind of the way
But
it
but
happened.
if you look at other sports, a lot of the time people have a really bad accident,
Right.
and then they'll be like, maybe I just
Right.
won't do that sport anymore. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they and I wonder whether it kind of makes me think sometimes, because I've asked this to a few people, whether horses are a sport, an art, or like a way of
Oh,
life.
that's such a good question.
Yeah. And I'm curious what you think about
I
that.
think way of life.
Right.
Yeah, for me, they are. Definitely they're an art, but I don't know. For me, it's a way of life. I think I'm really fortunate to be able to say that because here
Yeah.
it's what we do and they're part of all the things that we do for our livelihood kind of centers around horses for us. So,
Well, and if it's a way of life, then if you had an accident, you wouldn't change your life,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I think if people do a sport and then they have an accident or something bad happens to them and they think, well, my life
Mhm.
is more important than the sport, so I'm going to stop
Right.
doing this thing. As an artist, I think people typically this is like that's how they like exist in the world,
Yeah.
which reminds me a lot of the advice you share about like the horsewoman that you are is like the person you wake up in the morning as and the person you go to bed as. And the way of life to me is what then reinforces why so many horse people will have like major like traumatic brain injuries, or they'll have like super like like multiple fractures.
Yeah.
They'll have major like you have Tiffany Foster who rides for Canada. She's a rod
Yeah.
she's a rod like inserted in her spine,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
rides, and they even said to her when she broke her back, like, you're not going to ride again, and she was like,
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see
yeah.
about that. The consistent theme, which I love, and I'm so proud of the horse world for this, I think, is one, when people get hurt, they don't let that affect, like, they're like, I'm still a horse person
Yeah.
and I'm gonna come back, and maybe I'll come back differently,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to spend the rest, like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with horses.
Yeah.
And two, how many
Yeah.
defy the
Yes.
odds, and people
Yeah.
say you're never going to ride again, and they're like,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
see
see.
about
And
that.
I think so much of that is because of the role the horse plays
Mm,
in motivating them to get through that, right? Like at Heart of the Horse at our event, we've had two guest speakers that Amberly Snyder and J.R. Vizane, and both of them were, paralyzed and have gone on to do great riding things. And they've talked about just that, like how the horse motivates them to want to get back in the saddle and to want to do the therapy and to want to get better and to
mhm,
want to. And JR's accident was on a horse, and yet the horse inspires him
mm,
to want to do better and be more. And it just, I think you're so right when you say in the horse world, um, people defy the odds and they come back and they never want to give it up because I think I think the horse, like, they never blame it on the horse. They never, like, the horse is what they look to
Yeah.
inspire them, to get them going,
Yeah.
like, they see that compassion from the horse and they show the horse compassion, and it's not a thought of like, oh, they did this to me, or oh, it's like, well, it happened. Things happen. It's a big flight animal that
Yeah.
protects itself, right? So things happen sometimes. But I think you're so right. The horse world is crazy cool like that.
Yeah. We're a bunch of resilient humans.
Yes. Yes.
I want to ask you a little bit about Liberty riding before we kind of wrap up, because
Yes.
you are such a beautiful Liberty rider and trainer. And for someone who's never really done any Liberty, but I have a horse that I think is
Yeah, we're
really,
going to change that.
I know, I'm so
Yeah.
excited. What's some advice for people who are kind of watch Liberty, but they go, cool, that person's doing, there's no saddle, there's no bridle, like that feels completely inaccessible to me.
Right.
How do I start? How do I even dip my toe into it? Because
Yeah.
I think it's intimidating for a lot of people. I know it's been intimidating for me.
Yeah, well, and it was for me too, because you watch it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But I could never do it. Like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. And
Yeah.
I went to Australia and saw this amazing Australian, Dan James, doing all this cool Liberty stuff.
Dan.
And I was like, I gotta do that, right? So I flew Dan. Well, I did that show in Australia with Dan, and then I was like, one day I'm gonna get you over to teach me all this stuff. And I did that.
Nice.
And I spent a month with him, and he taught me, and I learned so much. And now I just think it's such a gift to be able to share that with people. So, and there's lots of great Liberty trainers out there that share that. So, lots of clinics, online things, instructional things, like it is accessible and it is out there. And there are some great teachers, mentors, trainers. So I think just find somebody that you trust and admire and the way they do things, and go learn from them, or figure out how to get that info and then just get to work on it.
If people who are listening to this podcast are like, yeah, but okay, Niki, Noelle, like what's like the first step of Liberty? If they want to know, like, what's kind of like the first step? Like, how do you kind of like step into Liberty?
Well, the first step for me is a very specific round pen exercise where it's like a lot of the join up exercises that you see, but I have a pretty specific way that is kind of a combination of what I've learned from Dan, and then just kind of tweaked a little bit to what really feels good to me and what has worked for me over the years. And so I just call it the connection exercise, and I just work them around in the round pen and get offering that shoulder as I'm going with them. And it's just a real timing and a release thing.
Cool.
And it doesn't take all that long. And you get a couple of those round pen sessions in, and you've got them with you. And that's your foundation of just getting them with you.
Okay.
And once they're with you, then you can get into, having them not just follow you, but working circles, changing directions, sending them out, stopping them, calling them to you, all these other kind of cool things. And then the really specialized mark training, or rearing, or laying down, or all that kind of stuff that, when done at Liberty, it's a really cool thing, right? So
it's an amazing feeling. Like,
yeah,
I've been
it's
just
cool.
playing in the round pen with Gigi around Liberty work, and just even like feeling like he's completely at Liberty. He's got no halter, no nothing.
Yep.
And then if I just shift my energy and I move across a little bit to the side, and because he has some dressage training, he kind of does like a little half pass.
Yes.
And it's such a cool feeling. It's like this
cool
energetic cord exists between us.
Yeah.
And we get to be like a symbiotic unit. And the feeling, I was like, oh, okay, this is addictive.
It is. And I think that's why Liberty is really growing. And I think because anybody can do it, any horse can do it, discipline, breed, age, person or horse, you need very little tools, money. You don't need any kind of specific horse or equipment or setup. You can use, as long as you have any kind of enclosed area. Smaller means it makes it a little easier. A round pen is nice to have. But and when you feel that, and they get, like, you have that light bulb moment, and they get it, and they want to be with you, and they're trying, and it's addictive, because it's just like, this is cool.
So cool. I'm so excited to learn more.
Yeah,
from
well,
you
we'll
around
have
that.
to get out in the round pen and try it.
I'd love that. Okay, so to wrap up, I ask everyone on the
Okay.
podcast these rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You just have to answer with the first one, the first thing that comes to
Okay.
your mind. If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
One book to the horse world. Ooh, well, I really like Warwick Schiller's latest book.
Principles of Training?
Yeah,
Nice.
it's good. I like it. I think everybody should read it.
Brilliant. That's a good shout out for work.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too. Who is the most iconic horse in history?
Oh, first one that comes to mind is Secretariat. I don't know.
That's great.
I mean,
That's an
huge heart.
huge-
Amazing. Huge heart.
Physiologically
Yes.
and emotionally and
Yeah,
spiritually.
you can't. I mean, that's what I thought of, I guess.
I love that answer. Most undervalued skill as a rider?
Emotional regulation.
Epic answer.
I feel like I could work on that. But
Me too.
yeah,
Me
we'll
too.
be works in progress.
We'll work this
Yeah,
together.
we'll work on that together.
Who is the greatest horseman in history?
Oh, greatest horseman in history. I have to say Ray Hunt.
Yeah. Okay.
Have to.
Yeah. I think that's a good answer.
Yeah.
And the last question, mares, geldings, or stallions?
For me, geldings. A lot of people disagree and say mares because mares will try really hard for you. I always chose geldings because with all the live performances and movie stuff, I just liked a little more of an even keel personality.
Yeah. I love
So
it.
for me, geldings.
Perfect. Thank you so much for
You're
coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I
It was
learned
fun.
so much.
So did I. It was great. It was so good.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle.